I caught my son and his wife at the bank. They were stealing my money behind my back. So I emptied all their accounts. Evelyn Sterling, a woman whose existence had been meticulously woven from threads of quiet dignity and the intricate dictates of familial obligation, found herself staring at a glowing screen with a chilling calm that utterly belied the tempest brewing deep within her soul. The tablet, a thoughtful yet rarely used gift from her beloved grandson, pulsed with a relentless cascade of vibrant images. Turquoise waters shimmered under an impossibly blue sky. White-gloved waiters glided through sun-drenched decks serving champagne. And there, undeniably, were her son, Orion, and his wife, Serafina, beaming, their faces bronzed under a tropical sun. They were on a luxury world cruise, a month-long odyssey that promised to crisscross continents, allowing them to sample caviar in Monaco one day and explore ancient ruins in Rome the next. Each post, meticulously tagged with a different exotic location, the dazzling lights of Dubai, the serene canals of Venice, the vibrant markets of Marrakesh, felt like a fresh, glittering barb aimed directly at the tender, vulnerable core of Evelyn's heart. They had not invited her. They had not even mentioned it. The oversight, or perhaps the deliberate omission, felt like a physical blow. A tight knot, bitter and familiar, formed in the pit of Evelyn's stomach, an ache born of decades of quiet neglect, a silent, mounting toll. She scrolled through their daily updates, a perverse, almost morbid fascination drawing her deeper into their ostentatious display of joy and leisure. There they were, posing by the ship's infinity pool, an azure expanse that seemed to stretch into eternity. Serafina, draped in a designer bikini that clung to her perfectly sculpted figure, reclined with an air of effortless glamour. Orion, beside her, wore a smug, self-satisfied grin, a half-eaten lobster tail visible on their table, an emblem of their unrestrained indulgence. The caption beneath the image, bright and unapologetic, read, "Living our best life. So glad we finally took this leap. Sometimes you just have to treat yourselves." Right? Treat yourselves? Evelyn murmured, the words tasting like ash in her dry mouth, each syllable a bitter accusation. A cold dread, insidious and unsettling, began to creep into her bones, not merely from the raw sting of exclusion, but from a deeper, more unsettling intuition. It was a premonition she had learned to trust over 78 years of navigating life's complex currents. A persistent whisper that something was deeply, profoundly amiss. This feeling was rarely wrong. It was a quiet alarm bell that had rung true more times than she cared to count. With a trembling finger, yet one imbued with an unexpected resolve, she navigated to her banking app. The screen glowed, illuminating the stark details of the joint account she shared with Orion. It was an account ostensibly established for emergencies and shared family expenses. Though in truth, Evelyn knew, it was predominantly her money, the Sterling inheritance, funding their every whim, their every manufactured crisis. The digits stared back at her, cold and unblinking. Her eyes, sharp despite her age, scanned the recent transactions, and there it was, stark and undeniable. A single, colossal withdrawal, dated just days before Orion and Serafina's grand voyage had commenced. The amount was staggering, enough to fund not just one, but several such cruises, a sum that made Evelyn's breath catch in her throat, a gasp of disbelief and betrayal. Her intuition, it seemed, had been tragically, devastatingly accurate. She picked up the telephone, her hand surprisingly steady, a testament to the iron will that had begun to form beneath her gentle exterior. The call connected, and Orion's voice, jovial and a little too loud, boomed through the receiver, backgrounded by the distant sounds of bustling port activity and what sounded like festive music. "Mother, to what do I owe this pleasure? Just docked in Santorini. Absolutely breathtaking. You should see the caldera." Evelyn's voice, however, remained as cool and precise as a winter's morning, utterly devoid of the warmth he might have expected. "Orion," Evelyn simply saw your posts. The cruise looks extensive. Very extensive indeed. He chuckled, a sound devoid of genuine warmth, a practiced, hollow amusement. Oh, mother, it was a last-minute thing, a spontaneous decision. Really? You wouldn't have enjoyed the constant movement anyway. All those rocking waves, not good for your constitution, you know. And the ship's excursions are quite demanding. He dismissed her concerns with a flippant wave of his hand, a gesture Evelyn could almost see through the phone line, a familiar, patronizing gesture that had grated on her for years. The casual dismissal, the thinly veiled condescension, the immediate assumption of her fragility and her inability to cope, it sliced through Evelyn like a surgeon's precise, cold scalpel. It was the same old song and dance, the same carefully constructed excuses designed to keep her at arm's length while simultaneously ensuring her wallet remained conveniently open. "Evelyn sees," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Yet each word carried an unspoken weight. And the rather substantial withdrawal from Evelyn's joint account, Orion? Was that also part of this spontaneous decision? A beat of stunned silence stretched across the thousands of miles separating them. A sudden, jarring void in the line. Then, Orion's joviality evaporated, replaced by a nervous stammer, a frantic scrambling for an explanation. The withdrawal? Oh, that. Yes, well, we had some unexpected expenses, mother. Urgent repairs on the house, you know how these things pop up. Didn't want to bother you with the details while you were enjoying your peace and quiet. We'll pay it back, of course, as soon as we settle some things. His voice grew hurried, defensive, a transparent shield of lies, a desperate attempt to regain control of a narrative he had always orchestrated. Evelyn closed her eyes, a wave of profound weariness washing over her. A deep, bone-deep fatigue born of years of this charade. The unexpected expenses narrative was as old as Orion himself, a well-worn excuse for every new desire, every financial shortfall, every luxury they simply had to have. But this time it was different. This wasn't just another bill for her to cover. This was outright theft, a brazen violation of trust, a cruel and public mockery of the affection she so desperately craved, the familial connection she had spent a lifetime nurturing. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow, a sudden, sickening clarity. They viewed her not as a mother, not as a person deserving of love and respect, but as an inexhaustible ATM, a silent, obliging source of endless wealth, a walking, talking bank account to be plundered at will. A newfound resolve, cold and sharp as a shard of ice, began to form within her, crystallizing in the silence of her elegant sitting room. The decades of quiet sacrifices, the endless financial bailouts, the constant rejections disguised as thoughtful exclusions, the emotional manipulation, the sheer, unadulterated ingratitude. It all coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. Evelyn Sterling, a woman who had given everything, who had poured her heart and fortune into a bottomless pit, was finally, irrevocably, done. She ended the call with a curt, "Enjoy your trip, Orion. Evelyn will speak with you when you return." The words were devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the earthquake that was now beginning to rumble beneath the very foundations of her family's carefully constructed world. To understand Evelyn's chilling resolve, the unyielding strength that had suddenly surfaced, one had to trace the serpentine path of her generosity, a path that had, over the decades, transformed from loving support into a gaping maw of entitled expectation. Evelyn Sterling had not always been merely the mother who paid. She had once been the beloved wife of Arthur Sterling, a shrewd and successful real estate developer whose foresight and industriousness had amassed a formidable fortune. Arthur had been a man of quiet strength, a loving husband and a doting father who believed in providing security, not endless indulgence. When Arthur passed away nearly 2 decades prior, he had left Evelyn not just a vast inheritance but also the implicit understanding that their wealth was to be a bedrock of security, a legacy for their only son, Orion, and his burgeoning family, a foundation upon which a stable and prosperous future could be built. Evelyn, with her gentle heart and boundless love, had embraced this responsibility with open arms, seeing it as her sacred duty to honor Arthur's wishes and ensure her family's well-being. Orion, however, had inherited little of his father's fiscal acumen or work ethic. He possessed a charming smile, an easygoing, almost carefree manner, and a profound, almost pathological, disinterest in the intricacies of financial responsibility. From his earliest adult years, he had drifted from one failed venture to another, each one more implausible than the last. There was the exotic fruit import business that saw a container of rare durians spoil on the docks, the artisanal coffee shop that couldn't cover its rent, the online startup that fizzled before it even launched. Each failure required a modest investment from his mother, a temporary loan that was never repaid, a small emergency to be covered. Evelyn, ever the supportive parent, had always provided, chalking it up to a young man finding his way, believing each time that this would be the lesson, that he would eventually learn to stand on his own. She wanted to help, to cushion his falls, never realizing she was simply preventing him from learning to walk. Then came Serafina, Orion's wife. Serafina was a woman of striking beauty, with an elegant poise and a captivating smile. Her arrival in the Sterlings' lives was like a perfectly coiffed, cashmere-clad whirlwind. She charmed Evelyn with effusive praise, flattering compliments, and carefully curated displays of affection, thoughtful gifts of expensive teas. Long, seemingly heartfelt phone calls, invitations to exclusive charity events. But beneath the polished veneer, Evelyn would slowly come to realize, lay a calculating mind, one that quickly assessed Evelyn's deep pockets and even deeper desire for familial connection and affection. Serafina saw Evelyn not as a mother-in-law to cherish, but as the ultimate financial lever, a means to an end. The effortless wealth, the social standing, and the life of unbridled luxury she so desperately craved. Their life together became a meticulously choreographed performance of manufactured need and unwavering provision. Evelyn had purchased their opulent, sprawling home in an exclusive suburban enclave, a property that was, in truth, far beyond Orion's meager earning potential. It was presented as a grand gesture, a family legacy, but it quickly became a perpetual drain. Evelyn had paid the substantial down payment and, quietly, for years, covered the monthly mortgage installments, the ever-increasing property taxes, and even the exorbitant homeowners association fees that maintained the meticulously manicured common areas. Each month, substantial sums simply vanished from her accounts, reappearing in the Sterling family's idyllic suburban life, maintaining their illusion of prosperity. The cars in their driveway were always top of the line, gleaming symbols of their perceived prosperity, constantly updated. Evelyn had purchased Orion's sleek Mercedes sedan, a lavish gift for his 45th birthday, presented with a flourish and a heartfelt thank you that quickly faded. A few years later, Serafina's powerful Range Rover, a necessity for chauffeuring the grandchildren to their various elite activities, materialized, also courtesy of Evelyn. These were not modest vehicles. They were statements, status symbols, and Evelyn was the silent patron behind every one. Maintenance, insurance, even fuel costs, if a complaint about money arose, Evelyn often found herself discreetly transferring funds to cover these unexpected burdens, a bottomless well of support. The grandchildren, bless their hearts, were lovely children, bright and generally well-behaved. But they were also, Evelyn slowly recognized, pawns in Serafina's relentless pursuit of social validation. Evelyn had gladly funded their elite boarding school education, an annual expenditure that rivaled the GDP of a small nation, justified by Serafina as giving them every advantage. From tuition fees to bespoke uniforms, expensive textbooks to a bewildering array of extracurricular activities, sailing lessons, equestrian clubs, ski trips to Verbier, private tutoring in Mandarin. Evelyn footed every bill without question, always hoping that her investment in their future would somehow translate into genuine family bonds. Their wardrobes were equally extravagant, a parade of designer labels. Gucci shoes, Prada handbags for the teenage granddaughter, Ralph Lauren and Burberry for the grandson. Serafina would often subtly lament the necessity of such expensive items, implying that anything less would somehow damage the children's social standing, a veiled manipulation that always worked. Evelyn, wanting her grandchildren to have every advantage, every privilege, would always acquiesce, her heart aching for their well-being. Yet, despite her unending financial largesse, Evelyn felt herself increasingly relegated to the periphery of their lives, a forgotten fixture. Family gatherings were rare and often felt like obligations rather than genuine expressions of love, meticulously planned by Serafina for maximum social impact, with Evelyn as an afterthought. When they did occur, Evelyn was often treated as an accessory, an elderly relative to be politely tolerated, rarely engaged in meaningful conversation. Serafina would dominate discussions, regaling others with tales of their extravagant holidays, always funded by Evelyn, of course, though she never mentioned that detail, or their latest high society escapades, rarely including Evelyn in the narrative. Orion would offer a perfunctory hug and a quick, "How are you, mother?" before quickly retreating to discuss golf or business with other male relatives, leaving Evelyn to observe the bustling family from a quiet corner. An invisible benefactor, her heart ached for a connection that never materialized. Birthdays and holidays were particularly painful, stark reminders of her diminishing place in their lives. Evelyn would arrive with thoughtfully chosen, often expensive gifts, a rare first edition book for Orion, a vintage designer scarf for Serafina, the latest tech gadgets for the grandchildren, only to receive a hastily wrapped token in return, often something she would never use, clearly purchased without a moment's thought. Her own birthday celebrations were often forgotten or reduced to a hurried dinner at a restaurant she didn't particularly enjoy, paid for, ironically, by a gift card she herself had given them months prior. The indignity of it all was a slow, corrosive poison. The most egregious examples of their casual disrespect were the constant, subtle, and sometimes not-so-subtle hints for money. A phone call from Serafina, ostensibly to check in on Evelyn's health or to share a trivial anecdote, would invariably pivot to a crisis. The roof needed replacing, the children needed braces, a sudden investment opportunity had arisen for Orion that simply couldn't be missed. Evelyn would always comply, her heart aching for the genuine affection that never seemed to materialize. She longed for a spontaneous visit, a heartfelt conversation, an invitation to simply be with them, not just to pay for them. But these moments never came. Her generosity was a one-way street, a constant outflow with no emotional return. One particularly galling memory involved a major charity gala. Evelyn, a longtime patron of the arts and a supporter of various philanthropic causes, had secured prime seats for a prestigious event, a highly sought-after affair. Thinking of her son and daughter-in-law, she had offered them the coveted tickets, thrilled at the prospect of sharing such an elegant evening. Serafina had gushed her thanks, promising to attend, raving about the dress she would wear. Yet, on the night of the gala, Evelyn, dressed in her finest gown, her heart alight with anticipation, found herself waiting alone in the grand foyer. A perfunctory text message arrived from Orion just minutes before the event began. "So sorry, Mother. Something unavoidable came up. Enjoy the evening." The disappointment was a cold, sharp knife. Later, Evelyn saw photos on social media, Orion and Serafina at a trendy club across town, laughing with friends, a bottle of champagne in hand, clearly having the time of their lives. The charity tickets, Evelyn later discovered through a discreet inquiry, had been quietly sold online for a handsome profit. The betrayal was absolute. Another time, Evelyn had offered to take her grandchildren on a trip to Disney World, a dream she had cherished since they were small, picturing their joyful faces. Serafina had dismissed the idea with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. "Oh, Mother, they're far too old for that now. All those cartoon characters. And besides, the thought of all those crowds. No, thank you. We prefer more refined travel." A few short weeks later, Evelyn saw social media posts of the grandchildren enjoying a lavish vacation in the Maldives. Turquoise waters and luxury villas. A trip paid for, of course, by a large sum Evelyn had recently transferred to Orion for school supplies and essential equipment. The irony was a bitter pill. These were not isolated incidents. They were the myriad threads that wove the tapestry of Evelyn's relationship with her son and his wife. A fabric of profound financial dependency for them and heartbreaking emotional deprivation for her. She was a ghost in her own family, a purse with legs, a silent, ever-present ATM. The realization had been a slow, painful burn over many years, a creeping disillusionment. Yet, she had clung to the hope, the delusion, that her generosity would eventually, somehow, earn her the love and inclusion she so desperately craved. The cruise, the brazen theft of her money, and Orion's casual dismissal had not just broken that delusion. They had shattered it into a million irreparable pieces. The quiet, dignified widow was gone. In her place, a woman of steely resolve was emerging, ready to reclaim her life and her fortune from the grasping hands that had bled her dry. The telephone call to her financial advisor, Mr. Albright, was made the very next morning. Evelyn's voice, though quiet, resonated with an unshakable conviction, a newly discovered inner core of strength. "Mr. Albright," she began, her tone leaving no room for negotiation or equivocation. "Evelyn needs to make some significant changes to her financial arrangements, effective immediately." Mr. Albright, a man who had managed the Sterling family's considerable assets for 3 decades, knew Evelyn well enough to recognize the rare, steely edge in her voice. He had seen her through the grief of Arthur's passing, through countless emergency transfers to Orion, always with a mild, unspoken concern etched on his face, though he never overstepped his professional boundaries. Now he sensed a monumental shift. He listened patiently as Evelyn laid out her instructions, meticulously detailing each step, her voice growing firmer with every command. "Firstly," she directed, her gaze fixed on the framed photograph of Arthur on her mantelpiece, a silent promise to herself and to his memory. "Evelyn wants the joint account with her son, Orion Sterling, immediately closed. All remaining funds are to be transferred to a new, private account solely in Evelyn's name, with no access or visibility granted to anyone else, under any circumstances." Her voice was clear, unwavering, a stark pronouncement of severing ties. "Secondly, Evelyn wants all recurring payments, all direct debits originating from any of Evelyn's accounts, to be meticulously reviewed. Any payments currently directed towards Orion Sterling, Serafina Sterling, or any entity associated with their household mortgages, car payments, school fees, utility bills, credit card payments, even their gardener and pool service, are to be canceled. Permanently, there are to be no exceptions." Mr. Albright scribbled furiously on his notepad, his brow furrowed in a mixture of surprise and professional duty. "Evelyn, this is a significant change. Are you quite sure about the implications? This will have an immediate and considerable impact on their lives." "Evelyn is entirely sure, Mr. Albright," Evelyn replied, her gaze distant, fixed on the photograph, seeing not just Arthur, but a lifetime of quiet acquiescence. "Furthermore, Evelyn wants you to work with her legal team. Mr. Davies will be expecting your call, to review all past financial gifts and loans made to Orion and Serafina. Evelyn needs to determine if any of these can be legally recalled or if there are any clauses that allow for their recovery. Evelyn also wants any power of attorney or financial guardianship they might have over any of Evelyn's assets, no matter how minor, immediately revoked. Evelyn wants all avenues of access closed. The conversation stretched for nearly an hour as Evelyn systematically dismantled the financial empire she had painstakingly, though unwittingly, built around her son's family. Mr. Albright, a consummate professional, began to execute her instructions with quiet efficiency. The joint account was closed that very afternoon, the remaining funds transferred with a few clicks of a button. The automated mortgage payment for the grand suburban home, a sum that had flowed seamlessly from Evelyn's account for years and was scheduled for the first of the month, was canceled. The hefty tuition fees for the elite boarding schools, due next week, were blocked. The luxury car payments for the Mercedes and the Range Rover, the utility bills, even the direct debit for Serafina's monthly country club membership and her personal trainer, all were severed, cut off completely. It was a financial decapitation, silent and swift, executed with surgical precision from Evelyn's quiet study. The first ripple of panic in Orion and Serafina's carefully constructed world was almost imperceptible, a mere tremor in their perfectly ordered lives. Serafina was at her favorite high-end boutique, a delicate silk scarf draped over her arm, a knowing smile on her lips as the sales assistant rang up her purchase. She handed over her credit card, one of the many Evelyn diligently paid off each month. The machine beeped, then displayed the dreaded message, "Transaction declined." Serafina's smile faltered, her perfectly composed facade cracking slightly. "Oh, how odd," she murmured, her voice laced with annoyance, a hint of disdain for the machine. "It must be a temporary glitch, perhaps a system update at the bank." She offered another card, a different one, also paid by Evelyn. Again, the machine registered, "Transaction declined." A cold dread, foreign and deeply unsettling, began to prickle at her, a sensation she rarely experienced, as if a vital support beam had suddenly vanished. She made a hurried excuse to the sales assistant, leaving the silk scarf abandoned on the counter, and left the boutique, her composure now visibly frayed. Later that evening, Orion, attempting to refuel his gleaming Mercedes, found his card declined at the gas station. He tried another, then another. All declined. He cursed under his breath, attributing it to a bank error or mother's old accounts. The following morning, a terse email arrived from their children's boarding school. Urgent. Outstanding tuition fees. Immediate payment required to avoid suspension. This was followed by an equally alarming notification from their mortgage provider, detailing an overdue payment and a looming threat of foreclosure. The carefully erected financial dam, silently maintained by Evelyn, was beginning to crumble. "What in God's name is going on, Orion?" Serafina shrieked, her voice shrill, utterly devoid of the usual saccharine sweetness, her carefully constructed composure crumbling like cheap plaster. Her designer handbag lay discarded on the floor, its contents spilling out. "My cards are all declined. The school is threatening to expel the children. And the mortgage, Orion. We're going to lose everything." Orion, still reeling from his own financial embarrassments at the gas station and the sudden cessation of his credit, stared blankly at the screen. "I don't know. It must be some system-wide issue. Maybe Mother is having trouble with her bank account. She's getting on, Probably pressed the wrong button or forgot to transfer funds." He tried to project an air of calm, a false bravado, but panic was starting to coil in his gut, a cold, sickening sensation. He called Evelyn, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He tried again and again, but the calm, pre-recorded voice was all he heard, a voice that offered no comfort, no explanation, no easy solution. The panic escalated over the next few days, a relentless onslaught of bills and demands. The internet was cut off, plunging them into a digital darkness. The electricity company sent a final warning, threatening to plunge their opulent home into literal darkness. Their house cleaner refused to come, citing unpaid invoices. Their social life, meticulously built on credit and Evelyn's silent generosity, began to unravel. Invitations to exclusive parties and glittering galas dried up as word spread, subtly at first, then more overtly, that the Sterlings were experiencing difficulties. Serafina tried to put on a brave face, but the constant stream of bills, demands, and rejections began to chip away at her facade of effortless wealth. Their luxurious world, sustained for so long by Evelyn's silent hand, was not merely shaking. It was beginning to collapse. The grand stage was set for their desperate, inevitable return. The grand entrance of the Sterling mansion, with its ornate iron gates and meticulously manicured lawns, felt strangely desolate and unwelcoming as Orion and Serafina pulled up in their now grimy Range Rover, having paid for the fuel with a handful of emergency cash, a humiliating experience for them both. The vibrant glow of their world cruise had faded entirely, replaced by the grim, stark reality of a life teetering precariously on the precipice of financial ruin. They had cut their trip short, flying back in a hurried, panic-stricken daze, driven by the relentless cascade of financial emergencies that had descended upon them, a storm of their own making. Orion pounded on Evelyn's front door, his usual easygoing charm utterly replaced by a frantic desperation, his face pale and strained. Serafina stood beside him, her face tight with a mixture of raw fury and thinly veiled fear, her eyes darting nervously. Evelyn opened the door, her expression calm, her eyes holding a depth and an unyielding resolve Orion had never seen before, a quiet power that radiated from her. She didn't invite them in immediately, instead standing framed in the doorway, a silent, unyielding sentinel, observing them with a gaze that seemed to penetrate their carefully constructed desperation. "Mother, what is going on?" Orion burst out, his voice hoarse with panic, utterly losing his composure. "All our accounts are empty. My credit cards are declined. The mortgage, the school fees, everything. Have you gone mad? You're ruining us." Serafina, momentarily regaining her composure, stepped forward, her voice dripping with feigned concern, a practiced performance honed over years. "Evelyn, darling, are you unwell? Is this about the cruise? We simply couldn't have you on such a strenuous trip, you know. It was for your own good, dearest. For your health." Her hand reached out as if to comfort Evelyn, a manipulative gesture of false solicitude, but Evelyn subtly stepped back, avoiding her touch, a clear boundary drawn. Evelyn's gaze swept over them, a quiet storm brewing behind her placid exterior, her eyes seeing them with a new, unvarnished clarity. "Let's not pretend, Orion, Serafina," Evelyn began, her voice soft but firm, each word a carefully placed stone, deliberate and unyielding. "Let's not pretend this is a misunderstanding. Evelyn knows precisely what is going on. Evelyn closed the joint account. Evelyn canceled every single payment she was making on your behalf. Every single one." The words hung in the air, cold and undeniable, resonating with an absolute finality. Orion stared at her, his mouth agape, a flicker of true fear in his eyes. Serafina's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure venom. "But why, Mother? How could you? We're your family, your own flesh and blood." Orion stammered, his voice rising in disbelief, a note of wounded entitlement creeping in. Evelyn leaned forward slightly, her gaze fixed on her son, unwavering, unblinking. "Family, Orion? Is that what this has been? For decades, Evelyn has been your personal bank. Evelyn bought your house and Evelyn paid your mortgage. Evelyn bought your luxury cars and Evelyn paid for their upkeep. Evelyn funded your children's elite education, their designer wardrobes, their lavish holidays that you never bothered to invite Evelyn on, that you lied about the purpose of. Evelyn covered your unexpected expenses, your investment opportunities, your very existence, your entire lifestyle, without question, without complaint." Her voice remained calm, almost conversational, yet each sentence landed like a hammer blow, dismantling their carefully constructed world of lies. She paused, taking a slow, steady breath, allowing the weight of her words to settle. And what did Evelyn receive in return? Condescension, exclusion, superficial updates designed to extract more money, emotional manipulation, and now theft. Yes, Orion, theft. The substantial withdrawal from Evelyn's emergency joint account, which you used to fund your month-long luxury cruise, without a single word to Evelyn, without a single invitation, was theft. It was the final, undeniable proof that you see Evelyn not as a mother, but as a resource. An inexhaustible well of money to be plundered at your convenience, while Evelyn is left to wither in the shadows, longing for a connection you never offered. Serafina sprang to her feet, her face contorted in a mask of indignation, her voice shrill and piercing. How dare you accuse us of theft, Evelyn? We are your son and daughter-in-law. We simply borrowed from the account for a much-needed break. After all we do for you, the stress of having to manage your affairs, to ensure your comfort. Her voice trailed off into a whimper. Evelyn cut her off, her voice suddenly sharper. Though still controlled, the quiet fury barely contained. Manage my affairs, Serafina? You managed to extract millions from Evelyn's accounts while excluding Evelyn from every aspect of your lives. You managed to post daily, extravagant updates of your best life on social media, rubbing Evelyn's face in your deliberate omission, in her isolation. And then, when Evelyn gently inquired about the stolen funds, Orion dismissed Evelyn with a flippant excuse, as if Evelyn's feelings, Evelyn's very presence, were an inconvenience, a tiresome burden. Orion, finally finding his voice, tried a different, more desperate tactic, hoping to trigger her maternal instincts, the ultimate manipulation. Mother, think of the grandchildren. What will happen to them? They'll be expelled. They'll have no home. Do you want to ruin their lives, too? Is this your revenge? How could you do this to your own grandchildren? His voice cracked with feigned emotion, tears welling in his eyes. Evelyn looked at him, her eyes devoid of the usual pity, unmoved by his performance. Their lives, Orion, are the responsibility of their parents. You and Serafina have consistently failed to provide for them financially, relying entirely on Evelyn's generosity, teaching them nothing of responsibility or hard work. They will have to learn, as you both will, what it means to stand on your own 2 feet, to work for what they desire. This is not revenge. This is self-preservation. This is the end of Evelyn enabling your destructive, entitled lifestyle that has consumed so much of Evelyn's life and fortune. Serafina began to cry, dramatic, theatrical sobs that produced no actual tears, a performance designed to elicit sympathy. Evelyn, please, we'll do anything. We'll invite you to everything. We'll visit every day. We'll come live here with you. Just put things back. We're ruined. You're destroying your own family. Evelyn rose from her chair, her posture ramrod straight, radiating an authority they had never witnessed, a quiet, formidable presence. You are not ruined, Serafina. You are merely facing the consequences of your choices, the natural outcome of living beyond your means, on someone else's dime. And this family, as you call it, was built on a foundation of lies and exploitation, on a constant taking without giving. It was never truly a family in the way Evelyn understood it. Evelyn's decision is final. All financial ties have been severed. There will be no more payments, no more bailouts, no more emergencies funded by Evelyn. You will learn to manage your own lives, with your own resources or lack thereof. Orion lunged forward, his face red with a mixture of rage and fear, his voice a desperate snarl. You can't do this. We'll take you to court. We'll tell everyone you've abandoned us. Your own son. You'll be a pariah. Evelyn met his gaze, unafraid, her eyes unwavering. You are welcome to try, Orion. Evelyn's legal team is already fully briefed on every penny Evelyn has given you, every payment Evelyn has made, and every instance of your exploitation. Evelyn assures you you will find no sympathy there. The paper trail is extensive and irrefutable. And as for telling everyone, Evelyn suspects the truth of your dependence and your ingratitude will be far more damaging to your carefully constructed image, to your public facade of success, than any fabrication you might invent. A chilling silence descended upon the room, heavy and suffocating. Evelyn looked at her son, then at his wife, seeing them for the first time not as family she yearned for, but as the manipulative parasites they had become, their masks finally stripped away. There was no flicker of doubt in her eyes, only a profound sense of peace. The immense burden she had carried for decades, the yearning for a love that would never be reciprocated, the constant anxiety of their next demand, all of it had finally lifted. She had spoken her truth, and the world had not ended. Instead, it felt as though it had just begun, truly begun, for Evelyn. Orion and Serafina left Evelyn's mansion in a stunned silence, the profound silence of a catastrophic defeat. Their desperate pleas, their thinly veiled threats, their emotional blackmail, all had crashed against Evelyn's unyielding resolve like futile waves against a granite cliff. As the heavy oak door closed behind them, irrevocably sealing their fate, they were not just locked out of Evelyn's home. They were locked out of their entire financial reality, a reality that had always been propped up by Evelyn's silent hand. The drive back to their once opulent, now precarious suburban home was filled with a bitter, seething resentment that poisoned the very air. Serafina's theatrical sobs had dissolved into harsh, tearless gasps of fury, her face contorted. "She's utterly lost her mind," she hissed, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "After everything, the ingratitude, she's ruining us, Orion. Ruining us completely. How could she be so cruel?" Orion slumped in the passenger seat, his bravado utterly deflated, his mind reeling. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in with brutal clarity, a cold wave of despair. Their primary bank accounts, the ones Evelyn had habitually topped up like an endless spring, were indeed empty. The credit cards, which they had used so liberally for every whim and luxury, were useless plastic instantly rejected. The mortgage payment, which Evelyn had covered like clockwork for years, was now a looming threat, its absence threatening to unravel their very shelter, their grand illusion. The next few days became a dizzying descent into chaos, a relentless parade of consequences. The car loan company sent an aggressive notice of default for both the Mercedes and the Range Rover, threatening immediate repossession. The children's boarding school, true to their word, suspended them, sending them home with a terse note explaining the unpaid fees and the unlikelihood of their return. Their children, accustomed to lives of effortless privilege, of boarding school and designer clothes, were confused, then angry, then frightened by the sudden, inexplicable collapse of their perfect world. They didn't understand why their lives were suddenly falling apart, why they were being deprived of everything they had come to expect. Serafina, once the undisputed queen of her exclusive social circle, found herself increasingly isolated. Her calls to her usual lunch companions went unanswered. Invitations to charity galas, exclusive club events, and high society gatherings mysteriously stopped arriving. The whispers began, amplified by their sudden, visible financial distress and the abrupt absence of their usual lavish spending. Their country club membership, which Evelyn had paid for years, was revoked, severing another vital tie to their former life. The carefully constructed facade of effortless wealth she had maintained for so long shattered, exposing the brittle, hollow reality beneath. Their friends, fair-weather companions who had admired their lavish lifestyle, quickly distanced themselves from the spectacle of their downfall, unwilling to be tainted by association. Orion, meanwhile, was forced to confront the harsh realities of the job market for the first time in his adult life. His business ventures, always funded by Evelyn and always failing, had left him with no marketable skills, no legitimate experience, and a long resume of short-lived, unprofitable endeavors. He applied for countless jobs, from sales positions to entry-level management roles, only to be rejected repeatedly, his lack of genuine experience painfully evident. The concept of earning a steady income, of living within one's means, of actually working for a living, was entirely foreign to him, a cruel joke. He was like a pampered house cat, soft and ill-equipped, suddenly thrown into the unforgiving wilderness. The arguments between Orion and Serafina became constant, bitter affairs, their voices sharp with accusation and resentment. Each blamed the other for their predicament, for their inability to manipulate Evelyn, for their own financial recklessness, for the very fabric of their collapsing life. The opulent home, once a symbol of their success and a sanctuary of their indulgence, now felt like a gilded cage, filled with a suffocating tension and the looming, terrifying threat of foreclosure. They considered selling it, but the market was slow, and their desperate pride prevented them from admitting the true extent of their desperation to anyone. While their world crumbled around them, Evelyn Sterling began to breathe again. A deep, cleansing breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for decades. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation was not without its lingering pangs of sadness, a faint, melancholic echo of the love she had once held for her son, for the family she had so desperately tried to nurture. But it was quickly overshadowed by an overwhelming, exhilarating sense of liberation. The constant, gnawing anxiety of their next financial demand, the subtle sting of their condescension, the deep, persistent ache of her exclusion, all of it had vanished, lifted like a heavy shroud. She took her first true step towards her new life by calling her old friend, Margaret, a vivacious woman she had known since childhood, but had drifted from due to her all-consuming focus on Orion's family and their endless needs. "Margaret," Evelyn said, her voice lighter than it had been in years, infused with a newfound joy. "Would you like to join Evelyn for a proper afternoon tea? And perhaps Evelyn and you could plan that trip to Scotland Evelyn always talked about." Margaret, surprised and delighted by the unexpected call and the genuine warmth in Evelyn's voice, readily agreed, a promise of rediscovered companionship. Evelyn then walked through her own home, a space that now felt truly, unequivocally hers, a sanctuary of peace. She looked at the expensive gifts she had given her son and daughter-in-law over the years, a painting she'd never truly loved, a set of antique silver rarely used, a rare first-edition book that remained unread, and felt no regret, no bitterness. She felt a profound calm, a deep sense of peace. The money, the objects, they were just things ephemeral. Her peace of mind, her self-respect, her newfound freedom, these were priceless treasures she had finally reclaimed. She took out a travel brochure she had previously only dreamed of, her finger tracing a path across a map of Italy, imagining sun-drenched landscapes and ancient wonders. A quiet smile touched her lips. The world, once viewed through the narrow, constricting lens of her son's needs and demands, was now vast and full of possibilities, waiting for Evelyn to explore it, on her own terms, for the first time in her life. Months turned into a year, then 2, then 3. The seasons cycled, and with them, Evelyn Sterling blossomed, growing more vibrant with each passing day. Her life, once a quiet tableau of self-sacrifice and unrequited familial devotion, had transformed into a vibrant, rich tapestry of new experiences and rediscovered joys. She had indeed gone to Scotland with Margaret, hiking through misty glens, exploring ancient castles, and laughing more freely and genuinely than she had in decades. After that, a spontaneous trip to Italy, where she indulged her lifelong love for art and history, lingering for hours in museums, savoring regional delicacies in sun-drenched piazzas, and even attempting a few phrases in Italian. She enrolled in a local pottery class. Her hands, once busy signing checks for others, now found solace and purpose in shaping clay, creating beautiful, tangible forms. She joined a lively book club, where animated discussions about literature replaced the stifled silences and superficial chatter of her past family dinners. Her home, once a monument to a life half-lived for others, now truly reflected her own passions and tastes. She redecorated a spare room into a sunlit studio, filled with her burgeoning pottery creations, each piece a testament to her newfound creative spirit. She hosted small, intimate dinners for her new friends, conversations flowing easily, filled with genuine interest, shared laughter, and authentic connection. There was no pretense, no underlying agenda, just true camaraderie. The quiet dignity that had always defined Evelyn was now infused with a palpable sense of contentment and self-fulfillment, a quiet radiance. She spent her money on herself, on experiences that enriched her soul, on comforts that brought her genuine pleasure, and on charities that resonated deeply with her values, causes she truly believed in. She learned that true wealth was not just about the size of one's fortune, but the profound freedom and deep joy it could bring when spent wisely, on oneself and on those who truly deserved it. Orion and Serafina, meanwhile, were forced to contend with the harsh, unforgiving realities of a life without Evelyn's financial parachute. The grand suburban home, the very symbol of their effortless wealth and social standing, was eventually foreclosed upon, the bank seizing the property. They were forced to downsize drastically, to a modest rental apartment in a less desirable part of town, a stark and humiliating contrast to their former opulence. Their luxury cars were repossessed, replaced by a single, second-hand compact vehicle, a constant reminder of their fallen status. The children, initially resentful of their new circumstances, of sharing bedrooms and riding public transport, were forced to attend public school, a stark contrast to their elite boarding school experience. The shock of having to adapt to a vastly different lifestyle was immense, forcing them, slowly and painfully, to confront the true meaning of privilege and the hard-won value of honest work. Orion, after countless failed job applications and humiliating interviews, eventually found work in a small, local office supply company, a position far below his perceived status, utterly lacking the glamour he craved. He learned, slowly and painfully, the value of a regular paycheck and the sting of genuine financial struggle, of making ends meet. Serafina, stripped of her designer wardrobe, her social standing, and her endless leisure time, struggled even more profoundly. She attempted to find work in retail, but her condescending attitude and distinct lack of practical experience quickly led to her dismissal from multiple jobs. Their once vibrant social circle had evaporated entirely, leaving them isolated and bitter, constantly reliving their past glories and blaming Evelyn for their current woes, for the life she had stolen from them. They still tried to contact Evelyn occasionally, their messages oscillating between desperate apologies, thinly veiled threats, and pathetic pleas, but Evelyn had blocked their numbers, her peace too precious to be disturbed by their manipulative games. Evelyn, looking back, realized the profound lesson her life had taught her. Genuine love and respect cannot be bought with money. They are earned through connection, empathy, and mutual appreciation. For years, she had poured her fortune and her heart into a bottomless pit of ingratitude, believing, clinging to the hope, that her generosity would eventually unlock the affection she craved. But it had only fostered dependence and contempt, creating a transactional relationship where she had always been the giver, and they the endless takers. The true act of love, she discovered, was ultimately to love herself enough to walk away, to reclaim her own life, and to finally, truly, live it on her own terms. She had lost a son and a daughter-in-law, yes, but she had gained her freedom, her happiness, and her own beautiful, unburdened future. The most profound act of loyalty one could commit, she realized, was ultimately to oneself. Thank you for joining us on Evelyn Sterling's incredible journey from silent benefactor to triumphant survivor. Her story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the greatest act of love is to let go, and the most profound justice is found in reclaiming your own peace. If you found Evelyn's story compelling, and you appreciate tales of resilience, justice, and life lessons learned the hard way, then you're in the right place. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you more true stories of triumph over adversity, and moments where people stand up for themselves against incredible odds. Don't miss out on our next gripping narrative. Make sure to hit that subscribe button below and ring the notification bell so you're always the first to know when we release a new video. And now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever encountered such blatant ingratitude in your own life? Or perhaps, have you had to make a difficult decision to protect your own well-being, even if it meant severing ties? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section below. We read every single one, and your insights are truly valuable to our community. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.